Welcome to our compliance conversations in the midst of COVID-19, hosted by ILSA Inc. and Spot On Insurance. Today we'll be covering Secretary of State withdrawals and registrations.
So stuff we love to talk about. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. This will be 1 hour session. We wrap up right on time, but if people want to continue the conversation afterwards, we're happy to stay on. The mics have been muted. However, at the end, we'll be able to unmute your mic. You can also write your compliance questions in the Q&A section. So you can also put like hellos and I like your shirt, I like your hair in the chat, but if you will put your questions in the Q&A, that will keep it really good for us to keep track of the questions.
Okay, with us today is our General Manager, Russ Foster. In the back cave right there, Sabrina Slater, our Annuals and Corporate Manager, will be our chat manager. Oh, you're not chat manager.
That was last week. Manager. Sometimes she doubles up as our chat manager for other managers, but today she is running things.
And Tamika Johnson's right beside her, supervisor in our Annuals and Corporate Department. Kelsey Kilpatrick is going to be our chat manager. We also, our guest panelists, come to us from the California Surplus Lines Association. We have Joanne Delgado, the Vice President of Education and Compliance. And from the Texas Secretary of State, Mike Powell. Welcome. He's the Deputy Director of Business and Public Filings Division. Thanks for joining us.
So guys, we've been doing these weekly virtual sessions every week. In the past, we've gone on and we've shown you where we have we've actually given you a summary of the different regulatory bulletins that have been affected by COVID-19, like extensions and whatnot. We're not going to go through all of those updates because there's numerous ones, but we will have Russ, if you will please share the screen, if you'll show people where in our ILSA newsroom the latest updates can be found.
Will do. All right, if you guys seeing our website there?
Yes.
I always worry about it. I have too many screens.
Yep.
All right,
There.
on the ILSA Inc. website, our marketing department keeps us up to date with all of the latest regulatory bulletins by state. Sometimes we have stuff here that hasn't made it onto the state websites. So they do a great job of keeping this current. The great thing about this page is you can use the tags over on the right. So if you're looking for something specific, emergency regulations or COVID-19, what's on everybody's mind nowadays, you hit that, it will take you to every bulletin that's specific to the tag. So it's a great resource. We keep it super up to date and it's right there available to you. Also, if you need to contact the state, now some of these bulletins are about how to contact the state because they're working from home and taking extraordinary measures, but we have on our resource page, we have our contact information for every state. So since we've got Texas represented today, if you want to know about Texas, you hit the Texas tab. We've got all the information for the Department of Insurance, Department of Revenue, Secretary of State, Stamping Office, Surplus Lines Association. We've got their numbers, we've got their email addresses. If they have special features like a licensee search or business entity search, those tags all will work for you. So it's a great resource. We provide it free for everybody. Pop on there and use that, bookmark it if you want, and let us know if you have any problems with it.
Awesome, thank you. Another great resource that I know that our team uses a lot is from the WSIA website. For those of you that are in the surplus lines area, that's a great resource as well.
Okay, some folks that couldn't join us today, and we get that every week, have sent in their questions to ccquestions@ilsainc.com. So Kelsey, can you help us with any questions that have come up?
I believe that Tamika and Sabrina wanted to start off the topics and explain what we're talking about.
Okay, awesome.
Do it.
Take that away. So as you guys know, the topic for today is withdrawals and reinstatements. Should I stay or should I go? The very first thing that we want you guys to know is it's not just as simple as dealing with a license that you no longer want, or you just want to cancel and not renew it, and you're done with it. It's not that simple. There's Secretary of State, there's Department of Revenue, there's the Department of Labor. There's so many different regulatory offices that you have to notify, and not just necessarily notify, but file withdrawals and things like that to properly withdraw and remove yourself from that state. So we'll kind of start off with withdrawals. And in order to even begin with a withdrawal, you have to first have a registration with the Secretary of State. You don't really have to withdraw, of course, if you've never applied for one in the first place. So we'll start with that. A certificate of authority is just that. It's a registration at the Secretary of State allowing you to do business in that state. So if you no longer want to do business in that state, then of course that's where the withdrawal will come in. Now, we cannot legally advise you to tell you to go and that those registrations are required. However, it has been our experience, especially mine. I've been in the licensing industry for insurance for over 12 years now. If you are trying to apply for a license in, say, New York, you have to have a registration with the Secretary of State first before you can even apply for that license. So states like that, and there's anywhere from 10 to 15, if not more states that actually require that license to be in place before you can, or that certificate of authority to be in place before you even get your license, then that just tells you, hey, that's a red flag. You should probably just get it in all states.
The states like to use the phrase doing business, which means nothing and everything. Because basically, if you go to they don't always give you a definition in those states, give you like a list of activities. And this is something I wanted Mike to address. I know like Texas used to require before you could even get the license and be registered with the Secretary of State. We can't give you a legal advice, but it's basically like 2 reasons for it. Basically, they're giving you permission to do business and also allowing the public in that state to know who you are since you're from out of state, what you're doing in that state and have your information. So Mike, can you kind of clarify what Texas is looking for when they ask for a registration?
Yes, ma'am. It used to be a lot worse. The insurance code changed just a few years ago where just because you were doing some sort of activity, you had to register, and that's changed. But there are a bunch of requirements that foreign entities are required to kind of look at to see if they have to register. And usually if it's a, an interstate commerce thing where you're just helping a client do one activity, or you're just coming into a client that's already here, we don't consider that transacting business in Texas. Having said that, you should always consult your lawyer. But there's, conducting a meeting. If you never come to Texas, if you're not actively selling in Texas, those are things that we just don't think you require registration. But the reason you want to check with your attorney, because there is a late filing fee. So let's say you started doing business in Texas 3 years ago. It would be a one-time registration fee of $750, but if you want to get covered for those 2 previous years, then it's going to be an additional $1,500 for the filing. So that's $2,250. So that's a pretty big chunk of change to just do business in Texas, maybe for that one client you have or that one activity. So it's always a good idea. You can go to our webpage on foreign registrations and check those out and see if you fit under that. And then the last thing on that is the Texas Comptroller has a Texas Nexus questionnaire. If you don't qualify under that, you wouldn't have to register with our office. So,
I'd like to step in just for 1 minute because I know sometimes the lingo that we throw around, sometimes it's confusing to others, right? So I know that we have Joanne here, who's now with the California Surplus Lines Association, but previously was on the carrier side. So one of the terminologies that we threw out today was certificate of authority. So Joanne, if you'll just unmute your mic and tell us like the perspective of certificate of authority in that world.
Sure. So from a carrier perspective, carriers need to be authorized on an admitted basis in those states in which they want to sell insurance, right? So one would apply and obtain their certificate of authority to do business in that state, and then as well get those lines of business approved in terms of rate and form filings. On a non-admitted basis, I'm going to say the rules are similar to Texas in that if you are going to be doing business, either operating an office or transacting within the state, you would also need to have a certificate through the Secretary of State registering your business.
Thank you.
So like, here's where we kind of give you some good news, I guess. Once you register with the Secretary of State, if you do that, then you may be required to file annual or biannual returns with the Secretary of State or pay tax returns to the Department of Revenue, usually like a minimum state tax fee. You have to define minimum for yourself. In California, it's $800. You consider that minimum. But basically, that's what triggers our services. We go by the registrations for the Secretary of State. And that's another thing that I really wanted to throw to Mike, because one of the most common questions that we get is they confuse the franchise tax return with an annual return. And I know like the for-profit corporations, they don't file an annual report in Texas with the Secretary of State, but can you explain the periodic
Did you say periodic report?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you're a limited partnership, you have to file, or nonprofit, but I don't think we're talking about that today. You have to file a periodic report with our office and a public information report with the comptroller. That's on an annual basis. And then we require the the periodic report once every 4 years or whenever we ask. And we haven't been doing a lot of asking lately because we haven't had to ask for more work. So you've escaped, but the downside of that is we may not have the most up-to-date information. So you might have somebody that's later going to sign a document with us, but they're not on the latest periodic report, so they don't show up. So somebody may question, does this person have the authority to sign?
And so, thank you. And the main thing that we just wanted to clarify that the annual returns are the filings for the Secretary of State. For our purposes, that also includes the one filing, the Alabama Business Privilege Tax Return with the Department of Revenue. But for the most part, Secretary of State, and the tax returns are with the Department of Revenue. So franchise tax return is the Texas Comptroller, and the DOR, Department of Revenue filing. So we'll discuss withdrawals. So like the general scenario is if somebody's like, okay, I'm canceling my license, I'm no longer doing business. We've had situations where people have canceled their license and they've forgotten to withdraw from the Secretary of State. We had one person that for years didn't have a license and for years was paying these minimum tax in Kentucky and filing tax returns and doing the annual report filing, complete waste of money. So you just have to remember, you have to go ahead and do the withdrawal. Otherwise, they're going to expect you to continue to file the annual returns, the biannual returns, and to file those tax returns. So the additional requirements may include either a final annual or biannual return, and also a final tax return might be required as well.
And as you guys know, every state is different. So each state's going to have their own requirements that are going to be required up front before they'll allow you to withdraw from that state. So as we always say, you got to do your due diligence and do your research and definitely look into every aspect of what you can possibly have to do to withdraw.
Yeah, and what's maybe required for like, a foreign corporation may not be the same thing that's required for a partnership, especially when it comes to tax plans. Maybe a totally different requirement.
Tamika, I have a question for you guys. When you see that scenario where a client, a company cancels a license and yet continues to pay the Department of Revenue, the Secretary of State, those annual fees, is it because there's a disconnect with the person perhaps that's coordinating the licensing efforts of that agency? And sometimes the annual reports and the other the things with the Department of Revenue are being handled from the accounting department.
for what we do offer audits where we look at where you have an active license and then, you know, where you're registered with the Secretary of State, so we can catch things like that. But it's clearly a disconnect. It could be, you know, something that was just done a long time ago and just was obviously clearly not caught.
Excuse me. Tamika, we have a question from Kim Ratliff. Do you have to register with the DOR, or does that happen automatically when you register with the SOS?
That's a very good question. There are actually several states that require you to submit a Department of Revenue business tax account registration, which is basically a fancy way of saying, you know, you have to fill out an application to set up your tax account. Most states will go by your filing, but there are several states that will not accept anything, your money, your extensions, won't accept anything unless you apply. So it's not always just automatic. And in some cases, like with Pennsylvania recently, they changed their tax requirements for like their declaration de minimis. And for the most part, this applies to C corporations. So we had a lot of, in the past, S corporations and pass-throughs that were filing that tax. But if they didn't do a business registration ever, then they didn't have that information letting them know that they were no longer required to file that tax. And so they kept sending them notices and threatening to take out their Department of Insurance license and just asking for additional taxes, and it wasn't required anymore. So there are advantages if you can to go ahead and just kind of register, but not all states do it automatically.
I know one of the benefits that we do for our clients here at ILSA is, you know, a lot of ours are insurance agencies and brokers, and they're reaching out to us saying, hey, we want to branch out to this other state. So they're just looking to get a license. That's all they want. And we're like, okay, so we'll do, you know, a project saying, okay, it's not just a license. You also have to get this registration at the Secretary of State, which you also need. And then, you know, if required, if it's not automatic, it's a separate registration at the Department of Revenue as well. So we definitely want to educate our clients in that sense as well.
And like we were saying, like withdrawals, the issue of tax clearances can come up quite a bit. In Texas, they have 3 choices for your tax clearances depending on what you're needing. If you just need reinstatement only, withdrawal only, or you need to do both. Texas has those choices, and you request that online. But like I was saying, some states require more than one, like New Mexico. If you're a foreign corporation and you're trying to withdraw, they want 3 for some reason for themselves.
They're covering all the bases.
The Secretary of State, the Department of Labor, the Department of Revenue. Pennsylvania requires 2. They take like forever to give it to you. And Louisiana requires 2, one for the Department of Revenue and from the Department of Labor. So, you know, tax clearances can extend the process quite a bit. In Pennsylvania, New Jersey is taking like a year, and they know about that situation, but that's just how it is. And it's kind of, and also, if you get a rejection, so say like, you know, you're registered with the Secretary of State, but you never filed taxes ever, then you know, having to file all those back tax returns, that also extends the process as well. So tax clearances, where you have them, they can take a long time. And another thing is power of attorneys. A lot of states, not all of them, but a lot of states do require power of attorney to if you want somebody who's not a listed officer to discuss tax information. I know in Texas they have a well file number, and they send out their notices every year, and it has your well file number and usually starts with ST or RT. And we'll add this information in here, but there's also a phone number to get that number if you don't have it. And if you don't, in lieu of a power of attorney, you can just call that number, give them the well file number, and get your tax information. And there's also like an email as well for that.
Tamika and Sabrina, a couple of weeks ago, you guys updated us in respect to COVID-19, and you said that from the Secretary of State side, I believe, Illinois was shut down, correct?
Yes.
What are we looking at in terms of processing times for the tax clearance and whatnot? Are all of those being done online? I mean, what's going on there?
From the Secretary of State standpoint, they are everything that can be done online is still being done online, and from across the United States or across the board, they want us, if you can file it electronically, to go online and file those electronically. Illinois is one of those states that is actually still very paper intensive. So it's just a matter of, I know especially with their annuals where a due date is required, their extension applies to whenever they're back in the office. So it doesn't even start until the office opens back up. So, and then I believe it's 60 days. So 60 days after June 1st. As of right now, back in April, it was, they were going to open up in, May 1st. And then now that May 1st is come and gone, right now they're opening up June 1st. So, if you're needing anything from them, I know Kelsey has had some of them are working from home. So they'll email you. It's just they can't, like, especially if it was a paper application that was submitted to the office, they just don't have the ability to see that or get their hands on that because they are working. So it's definitely delaying in that sense.
And I know Texas does a lot of the reinstatements withdrawals online, and you put tax clearances online for the most part. Mike, can you give an update on the Secretary of State office right now, as far as like, is the office open or how is the?
Well, I'm out of home today, but the office is very limited in staffing, obviously, for the safety of our employees. We don't have walk-ins right now. It's just we have a drop box for couriers and stuff like that, but we're really limited. We have about 25 people in the office at one time. But like you all said, it's we really want electronic filings.
Mm-hmm.
We just put in a service that if you don't have if it's like I don't think of withdrawals online, I can't remember, on SOS Direct, but we now have an SOS Upload where you can upload the documents that aren't available on the online, and we can review that. It reduces about 7 steps. So it's not in a paper format, it's electronic, and we get that about 48 to 72 hours. So we're open, but when it comes in paper, like you said, it's really complicated. And trying to get people at home and trying to figure out, we have a 21-year-old legacy system, so we're paper oriented, but our times for turning those paper documents around is more than 10 days. So it's now the Department of Revenue, the comptroller, they're almost all working at home, and about 80 to 88% of their documents are filed electronically through the web file. So they're all pretty much able to work at home.
Excuse me, we have a question from Angela Dyer. Quick question, do you have a hard time obtaining the web file number for your clients if they don't have it?
Well, the good thing is, like I said, Texas, since it, like, I don't care how long you were registered, how long you had your account, I see them, like, they're mailing it out, like, every single year. And so as long as you're keeping that and you forward that to whomever is doing your taxes, that number is right there at the top. And also it's the free 24/7 web file number. Then you call that and you can get, you get information if you need that, but it's not hard to obtain. You can get it from the Department of Revenue, or you can get it from the notice, or you can get the Department of Revenue to forward it to the client if they don't have the notice.
Where are we at?
So now, and the final thing that we wanted you to understand for withdrawals is that if you were originally not in good standing for whatever reason it was, that you may now be required, before you can do the withdrawal, you may have to reinstate first. Texas is one of those states. Like I said, one of the third choice of tax clearances is both, if you need to reinstate and before you can withdraw. So we have the 3 primary reasons. You want to cover that for reinstatement?
Yeah, so if you are required to file a reinstatement, 3 of the main reasons are failure to file that annual report or biannual return, depending on the state's requirements, failure to file your corporate tax return, or even something as simple as not maintaining a registered agent on file. And speaking of registered agents, I know I'm going to beat Arleen to it because I know she's going to ask me what it is. A registered agent is basically someone that you appoint, especially if it's not your domicile state, it's your foreign state, and you appoint that person, whether it's a responsible individual who you trust and is reliable to accept that information from the state on your behalf, or it could be a commercial registered agent. Either way, You set them up, especially if you don't have a physical presence in that state or physical location. They actually act on behalf of you and accept any service of process or annual return notices or anything basically the state sends out to you. They accept and then forward it on to you. So. Oh, some of the states that do act as a registered agent, which is amazing. I think anyway, my clients can save some money. I'm all for it. Because if you don't know, registered agents, especially commercial and can be kind of expensive. But states like Oklahoma, New York, and Connecticut, they act as their own registered agent at the Secretary of State level, which is really nice. Oklahoma, I think, charges like a minimal fee, like anywhere from like $40 to $50. But Connecticut and New York actually do it for free, so that's really nice. That's one less fee that you have to worry about.
And so one of the things that can, and tests that can trigger like need for reinstatement is not filing your franchise tax return. So that's one of the things that comes up for that one as well.
We do, excuse me, we do have a question from Lisa. Aren't there some DOIs that will let you get licensed without an SOS registration, but the SOS requires it regardless of the DOI requirement?
So what I believe she's referring to is that some states, like I mentioned before, is if you're trying to apply for an agency license, they're going to require you, the Department of Insurance is going to require you to show proof of that certificate of authority before they will even issue the license for you. Now that's what I was saying. There's a multitude, and I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it's like anywhere from, I mean, it's pretty up there. It's like 15 to 20 states that even require you, like, show me proof. So that to me is a red flag. That's telling me that, hey, I should probably get this everywhere. Even if they don't require it up front, say like Oregon. Tamika and I just got an email from Oregon, or a client last week, where Oregon was notifying the client that, hey, we've issued your license. Here's your license number. Here's where you can go print your license. Oh, by the way, go register with the Secretary of State. So even though they're not requiring it up front, they fully expect you to follow through and get that registration. I think that answered it. If not, let me know.
We'll just open it up to the questions.
Okay, so our first question that was submitted is, so how does my license have anything to do with the Secretary of State or Department of Revenue? Do these offices actually talk back and forth?
Yes and no. In a perfect world, they would. In some states, they do. Say with the state of Virginia, they actually don't require you to have a certificate of authority up front. But if you don't have it within a certain amount of time, once you have your license issued, they'll go back, they'll talk back and forth. I don't know how it works. I don't know if they send it, pigeon or whatever they do, but they do talk and they do notify each other. So even though you have this license for 6 months, and the Department of Insurance can go in there and figure out if you don't have that certificate of authority, they'll cancel your license. And I don't know with the Secretary of State, Department of Revenue, they talk back and forth too.
I promise you, they're probably using pigeon right now. That's probably the primary way of communication.
Mike, do you want to talk to the Department of Insurance?
That was my question.
Let me get that. No, we don't. We do talk to the Department of Revenue on nightly screen or file transfer, but we do not talk to the Department of Insurance.
I talk really hard with the Department of Revenue. That's one of the main things I see for tests is the franchise tax. Just the franchise tax suspension usually so they get the tax filing. There's no fee, but the late fee is $50. And can you also explain this one thing that we kind of wanted to clarify, like how long those tax clearances last for reinstatement withdrawal? So if you get your tax clearance, what's the time that you take? How long they last?
I think it's 6 months, depending on, it depends when the tax date, this year, obviously with the COVID, I don't know, they've kind of moved all the tax dates, due dates. However, the reinstatements I just checked, and they're still showing May 15th, I think, is the reinstatement time frame. Yeah, always check that because if that date is passed, we're going to reject the document, and then you've got to go back to the comptroller and or the Department of Revenue and get that another form.
Yeah, and pay additional fees too, because a lot of times.
Quite possibly, yes.
And
So,
several states will, sorry. Sorry, Ted.
Joanne, can you shed some light on the communications over there?
Can you repeat that, Ted?
Can you shed some light on the communication in California?
Sure. So California is pretty similar, not a lot of communication back and forth. So it is important that you manage the two carefully because you won't receive a reminder, but you will receive a penalty or fine when they find that your registration is not there. So I recently just spoke with a business that has been in California for several years and never registered with the Secretary of State. So they contacted us because they weren't sure how to change the agent for service of process. And I forwarded along the link and I said, oh, well, you just do it right here. You can do it online, Secretary of State office. And he called, they said, well, we're not registered. How is that possible? And I said, well, it's very possible. So it is super important to make sure that if you're doing business within the state, that you make sure that you are registered. Most states have an easy link where you can go and look yourself up. So when you're done with your call today, if you're not sure if you are registered, go to that state's website, check it out. If you're working with ILSA, let ILSA check on that for you. Because I would tell you many of the states operate very separately on that.
And there's several states that will tell you up front if you messed up on taxes or any reports on the website. As far as taxes, California will put on their franchise tax suspended. Texas will let you know. Oklahoma will let you know if you have a suspension on there. Mississippi just joined the club, but they will take you out now for taxes.
They will take you out.
Yeah, take it out. North Carolina, they will show you if you messed up with annuals. They will show you when you messed up with taxes, and if you're messed up with both, they'll put multiple, which means you just need to go to the filings and just read everything and just find out where you messed up with your life in North Carolina. So some of the states they will tell you. Not all of them up front, but I mean, check the website and check for notices to see where you stand.
All right, our next question is, I received a rejection from the Secretary of State informing me that I must first have a certificate of tax clearance from the Department of Revenue. What is that exactly, and will there be more states that require it?
Tax clearance is basically the statement from the Department of Revenue that's letting you know that up to that point right now, you're up to date on the taxes. Now, you got tax clearance 2 years ago and you didn't withdraw, then guess what? You probably owe taxes for those 2 years. And like Mike was saying, read it and read the time period that it's giving you on there. But just saying up to this very point, you're clear. And you can take that tax clearance and use it for whatever the reinstatement withdrawal that you want to do it for.
Our next question is, I'm looking to cancel my license in Ohio since I'm no longer doing business there. What requirements would be needed to properly withdraw from Ohio?
And this is kind of like what we were saying before. It kind of depends on if you're a corporation or if you're a partnership. If you're an LLC, you probably must just file it and be done with it. But if you're a corporation, you might have to apply for like the tax clearance in Ohio, and then also notify the Jobs and Family, which is like the Department of Labor, that you're about to leave the state. In Ohio, they used to require franchise tax returns until the 2008 income year, 2009 franchise year. So you register after that, and you probably should be good to go. But we have had companies that registered before 2008 and turned out they owed like late tax returns there. So it's pretty much kind of look at what your structure is and to see what they have an online website. I don't like it, but they have it because it's kind of hit and miss. It's hit and miss. on there as far as that withdrawal, but it pretty much depends on what your structure is.
Our next question is one we get a lot, which is, I canceled my license. Why do I have to withdraw from the Secretary of State? Doesn't canceling my license show that I no longer do business in that state?
No. Just like what we said earlier, they don't talk. More often than not, they don't. They're two separate compliance regulatory offices. They go hand in hand when you're dealing with compliance, but you still have to separate the two. You still have to do separate notifications. Even though you can't just non-renew a license at the Department of Insurance, we highly recommend that you surrender that license, especially if you're in the surplus lines market, because that's a whole different realm of filings and requirements with the Surplus Lines Association. So we definitely say, cancel and surrender that license. We do the same thing on the Secretary of State side. If you're registered with the Secretary of State and you are no longer doing business in there, don't continue to file those annuals and corporate tax returns. You're just wasting money. You're not doing business, so properly withdraw that. Usually whenever you're doing the Secretary of State withdrawal, that goes hand in hand with the Department of Revenue, because you do have to get the tax clearance. So those kind of go hand in hand, I would say. You'll have to work together to properly withdraw from those states.
Okay. If you know someone that wanted to join today's session, we mentioned it earlier that some people for whatever reason cannot join, please let them know that on our Spot On Insurance YouTube channel, this will be aired starting tomorrow. We usually have it by Friday. Christian has it up for everyone.
So the replay will be there.
Replay, if you didn't catch information, you can go back and replay it and catch others.
And the other thing I want to point out is on next week's session, we're also going to be covering things such as withdrawals, but more from the perspective of when an agency is sold. So, like a lot of times people are like, well, why are all these withdrawals going on? Well, we're in an industry where there's a lot of acquisitions, a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So we're going to be doing a deep dive into that, like when there's a sale, what you have to do to stay in compliance, because that's big. That's, and a lot of times people are focused on the due diligence on the financial side, but not so much on the compliance side. And we'll be doing a deep dive into the mergers and acquisitions.
The other thing is we're always looking to improve what we're doing here. We're new to what we're doing today, but by next week, we're looking to possibly live stream to Facebook and YouTube. So it's just a matter of every week making a little bit of more self-improvement. We're going to get more regulators in, more folks from the state to come in and talk to us and give information that's really vital at this time.
And I mean, we're really grateful for our regulators having shown up and being there, and I know so many regulators are like, that's what we're here for. We're here to support this industry and support the community. So we're thankful that they're coming in and talking and just sharing what's happening in their respective state with all of you. So that's awesome. So we'll keep going to questions, Kelsey.
Our next one is, shouldn't we receive notices from the state if a tax filing is late or past due?
Especially from an annual return standpoint with the Secretary of State, you should receive notifications from them when an annual report is due, or if you have a filing requirement. The states are really good about notifying you of those requirements. Now, one of the main things that you want to keep in mind is that you, especially with your registered agent or if it's your domicile state, that the information that the states have on file, you must keep that up to date. Whether that's, a physical address, a mailing address, the phone number, email address, a lot of things are going electronically. They're shooting those annual return notices via email. Make sure that the information that the state has on file for you and your agency is up to date, so that you can receive those notifications. And if it's something that you need to take immediate action on, you can do that as quickly as possible.
Just to brief, I know that a lot of times, you have agencies that say, well, I never received my notices. And a lot of times agencies have turnover with personnel. So do you ever see, or have you ever suggested to clients that they set up like a generic email address? Because they're sending these emails to an individual. If that individual's no longer there and they don't have their IT department forwarding it to someone, I can see those returns not going to, just going into a black hole.
Yeah, some states are really good about sending out notices. Like Texas will send it out like pretty much when it happens. I know like with California, when you register with the Secretary of State, they'll send you kind of like a welcome packet, kind of introducing to you about this is going to happen now that you register with the Secretary of State with taxes. I would recommend that if you have a Department of Revenue that offers you a chance to set up an online business account so you see all of your information, that you go ahead and set that up. We've had more than, we have had too many occasions, especially like with Rhode Island and New York, but where it's not until they try to get tax clearance that they find out that they owe tax returns. And it's not like for a small amount of time. We have a client, and we had clients in the past where it could be from like, 1990 something to 2014 when they stopped the tax return. Rhode Island will throw it back to like 2001 to present. And it could be like, in the beginning it was $500 and they gradually went down to $450 and went to $400, but that's hundreds of dollars every year. California, if it's paper and if you're receiving paper notices, it's kind of be piecemeal and kind of spotty. And so it'd be like, oh, you owe a 2012 return and you get that in 2015. And then you start getting, here's another separate notice telling you about 2014. And it could be thousands of dollars because they get you two ways. One, for not making the payment on time. And, for depending on how you file your taxes, is the money you do a year in advance. And then they get you for not filing your return on time too. So they get you on payment and return. They keep increasing that interest for like a year or whatever. And then, ends up being thousands of dollars to get yourself back to being reinstated. So that's like we were saying, like with the registrations, that once you do that, then you really need to start asking questions about, what do I need to do to stay compliant? Because it would be ideal if they sent you notices all the time, but not often.
We do have a question, excuse me, from Kim Ratliff. How do we check to see if the information that the SOS has on file is up to date for each state?
Hi, Kim. I spoke to you quite a bit this week. Mainly you can, especially with the Secretary of State, you can go online and a lot of that information is directly right there on their website. You just search your name, put your business entity name in, pop it up, and it'll populate all the information. You can also go in there and see every annual report you've ever filed. In some states, they have those where you can just click the link and a PDF will pop up and it'll tell you everything. So you can look at officer information, addresses, emails, phone numbers, things like that. That's a great resource, I think, to find that information.
Mike, can you share with us like some of the pain points that you've heard, like why people haven't submitted their returns on time, why they say they didn't get it?
Yeah, I was just thinking of that when you were discussing mergers too, because those are such time-sensitive documents, and then you go to the Secretary of State to withdraw or to reinstate, and they said, no, you want to file a merger document, you're not in good standing. Well, everybody then running around trying to get documents filed within hours, and it may take longer than that. So that's been a real pain point. Plus, I was at the comptroller of the Department of Revenue the other day, and they showed me a pallet of mail that had been returned. I think there were 75,000 letters were sitting in that pallet, just had been returned, and they had sent them to the entities, and the entities, either the registered agent was no longer there, or they sent it to a business address that wasn't there anymore. So, I mean, they said that was actually just one of 4 pallets. So, yeah, it's so it's really difficult because their addresses are done differently. They only have 3 lines. It's silly, but so yeah, I would always check the Secretary of State database to see your status and keep that registered agent current, because it's really crucial that at least they're on the hook at that point if they don't get you the information. But then we forward information, or the comptroller forwards information to that registered agent. And so those are and say you have to reinstate, you come back, let's say you want to withdraw, well, you find out you were tax forfeited. Now you got to reinstate and withdraw. So that's 2 filings. And then because in Texas, that name has to be available. So you're trying to reinstate, the name's not available. So you have to file an amendment. So now you're up to $200 and some just for something that you could have done for 40 if you had kept your documents current.
I kind of want to go back a little bit to what Sabrina was mentioning about the registered agents, you know, that you can designate a professional that's in that state. I would highly recommend using a commercial registered agent, because a lot of times big agencies might have branch offices, you know, in many states, and they'll designate those offices as the registered agent. And then they move. Well, they don't think about that part, that was their registered agent. Or they'll pick a friend, a buddy, you know, hey, you can act as my registered agent. Their buddy moves to another state, whatever, just changes right within the state. But you don't think about that process, that's your registered agent. So it's really, you know, who you designate as your registered agent is important.
And one of the things I'd like to tag on to that, Arleen, is especially like with notices, or like say it's just as simple as an email address, or it's the mail room or the mail clerk's email address or the receptionist's email address. I would highly recommend don't use those. There is a lot of turnover. Those are temporary positions in some cases. Use the principal. They have a vested interest in what's going on with that business. I would definitely recommend using their email or their contact information, so that if something does go wrong, or, you know, immediate attention needs to be taken, they're going to have, you know, they're going to care. They're going to make sure that it's taken care of.
Guys, I just launched a little poll for you guys. So you might see it come up on your screen while we're chatting. By the way, let me see what, just a reminder that we do have over Arleen's head Spot on Insurance, which is our weekly podcast, and we're up to 164 episodes with a lot of information about what's going on in the industry.
If you haven't checked it out yet, check it out. We have tons of fun. Just because we do licensing and regulatory compliance doesn't mean that we're, at least he's a character. I'm the same one. Mm-hmm. But we have a lot of fun. But we interview people from around the world, InsurTechs, regulators. We've had the folks from Eleni come on several times. But it's just different things that are being done in our industry. So it's a really good way to broaden your insurance knowledge. I know a lot of times, like, people get hired on in marketing for an insurance agency, and they've sent me messages on LinkedIn. They said, oh my gosh, this has been such a great way for me to learn what's going on in the industry.
Episode 164 was when work gets, is fun, work gets done, and it's all about gaming. We call it gamification, but it's kind of gaming the system, having fun at work. Putting in contests so that people are constantly competing in a fun way to produce for you.
Yeah, so on that one page, on that landing page, you'll see like little promos of the different episodes that we've done. So it'll give you a good sense of what we, you know, the episodes that we have out there. And we have probably a great portion of them that are just dedicated to compliance. And so you'll be able to find those. That's what you just want to focus on, compliance. We have a great
The other thing is we've done several interviews on jobs in the industry. And we love giving snapshots for people who might feel they're stuck and want to change and would like to know what it is that, you know, what else is available out there in the insurance industry. Well, we try to give them sneak peeks with our podcast of what might be fun for you to be doing, because we know that the insurance industry is vast and there's so many different jobs, from cybersecurity and so on and so forth. Everything is in there, but sometimes you gotta look for it.
And so again, just a reminder, if you think of other questions during the week that you want to submit to our panelists, You're able to send those questions to ccquestions@ilsainc.com. And also, if you need help, just call our office, 254-729-8002. So back to questions, Kelsey.
Yes, our next one is, I called the Department of Revenue to find out why our tax clearance was rejected, and they told me I needed a power of attorney. Why would I need a power of attorney if I'm calling on behalf of my entity and I don't use a third-party vendor?
Because you're not listed on the account. Usually it's like the officer. Now, when we set up the, for those states that require you to do the application to set up the tax account, we list the officers on there. But if you finally, there's some states, you know, if you may work with that company for years, but if you're not the primary officer, then you're not allowed to do it. So basically, either the officer calls or they provide you with a power of attorney or get you added to it. And now in Texas, like I said earlier, they have like the web file number. So if you have that, then they'll let you use that number to get information.
Our next question is, I got a notice saying that I need to reinstate before I withdraw because I'm not currently in good standing. Why do I need to reinstate if I'm just going to close my business? What warrants a reinstatement?
Basically, like we've already mentioned, if for whatever reason you're not in good standing, then you may have to reinstate and then, of course, withdraw and formally withdraw from the state. But typically, you have to reinstate if you're not in standing. So that's, you didn't file any annual reports or your corporate tax returns, or for whatever reason that you are not in good standing. I'm sure the Secretary of State would be more than happy to tell you why you're not in good standing. And then whatever steps that you take to file that reinstatement so that you're in good standing. Good standing. Good standing. Good standing is key.
What is the difference between a reinstatement and a requalification?
Well, reinstatement means you're trying to return yourself back into good standing. It's going to be backdated to that original date you registered with the Secretary of State. So if you missed your annual returns or you just need to file an application, pay a fee, you do that, and your good standing is returned. Now, requalification, you know,
That's just as if you're filing for the very first time.
So
You're
yeah,
just going in there submitting a whole new certificate of authority application. It's as good once the state approves it, say, 2 days from now, that's the new original date. And then there's no history on that certificate.
It really does depend on the state, because some states will say like, oh, you have 5 years to reinstate and stuff like that. And then there's some states, I kid you not, you blink and you have to do a new application. Like you missed an annual return and it doesn't matter. They want you to start over and you don't get your new, your original date. A lot of times you can get a brand new date. So
in some cases, you'll even get a new, file number too as well. So just
yeah, you go on the website and there's two, one saying inactive and then your brand new one. So it really kind of depends on the state there.
Mike, you wanted to add something to that?
Well, just that we see those where instead of reinstating, they requalify. So now they'll find out, oh, I could have just reinstated for $75, but I paid $750 to register again. And, we're not big about returning fees.
I don't think any of the states are.
No, once we get those hands on it, man, that's it. But no, we will refund when it's a mistake like that. We try to do the right thing.
That's good.
But it could cause problems. Then you have another tax ID number too. So to undo all that takes a lot of time and effort. And you probably fixed another registered agent, so yeah.
Right.
So it just gets expensive in your time and in paying fees to the state.
But it sounds like then it's almost best, if possible, to reinstate rather than requalify.
Oh, absolutely. If you don't want to have anything to do with that prior company, you say, oh, well, whatever. I don't want to rekindle it, I guess. Yeah, it's better to reinstate. I mean, it's cheaper, and like they were saying, you get the original file number back. It kind of connects back in time, and you're not liable for, that. You were still an entity, so to speak, in Texas when you reinstate.
Joanne, anything to add to that?
Nope, I think actually that kind of falls true in California as well. The only thing that I would mention, just in case it doesn't come up, is that sometimes that annual report has to be filed sooner. So where we say it's an annual report, if there are material changes to the business, like a change in your officers and directors, you need to file that return within a certain time period of those changes occurring. It doesn't wait until the annual, and it's very much like that service of process agent. If that service of process agent changes, you need to update it with the Secretary of State within a certain time frame to keep yourself in good standing.
That's a really good point, Joanne, because I know a lot of people feel like, oh, I'll just update it during the annual report period. But really, if you have a change in officers, you're supposed to be reporting that at that moment.
And if I may add, if your entity, if your registered agent filed a resignation, doesn't want to be your registered agent anymore because maybe you missed a payment or something with that registered agent, or they're just getting out of the business, we can terminate you for failure to maintain a registered agent. So again, that's a different form you file with our office to reinstate. So there's a difference between tax forfeiture and then failure to maintain a registered agent in the state, Texas.
I just want to say thank you guys. You keep us in business with those things.
And thank you for
Us too.
Yeah, because I know in Texas there's the reinstatement form if it's for tax reasons, and there's reinstatement if it's like for non-tax reasons. So make sure you're filing the right thing there based on what did it.
Any more questions, Kelsey?
Yes, there's 3 more questions. The first one says, if I'm going out of business, what is the first thing I need to do in order to properly close my business?
Well, cancel your license, but we do advise that if you're doing withdrawals, do your non-resident states first. It's just less hassle-free, and just leave your domicile for last. That's the main thing. Just do it in order.
Yeah, that leads into our next question, which is, so I've already dissolved my domicile state. How would this affect my foreign registrations when I need to withdraw those states?
Badly.
Very badly. It makes it very difficult.
We had one agency that we told them, be advised that you do withdrawals. And they were like, no, we're just going to let them go, revoke, big deal. And then like a couple of years later, the registered agent was sending them invoices, and they were like, oh, we're your registered agent. 5 years stuck with us. And they had to pay all this money. So like, okay, let's do it. But they had already dissolved. And so you can do all the withdrawals because some of the states will require certificates of good standing and from home state, and we can provide that. So it's kind of like, just do it right. Just why go ahead and withdraw and get all that done, and just do it the right way, because it's a hassle if you come back and you try to do it. It's pretty hard. It just makes it more expensive, and it's ridiculous.
And our final question is, given the current state of the country with this pandemic, have any states made any changes to COVID in regards to requiring original signatures from officers or paper filings to be mailed into the office?
Yes, Maryland just recently added like withdrawals to their account magically. I'm glad they did. I hope they keep it. So you can do it online. I mentioned the AICPA website, and not only do they show you the extended due dates, like Texas and most states are 7/15 for all the April 15th tax returns, calendar year filers, and it also includes on there, and they keep it updated. It was updated just yesterday. It tells you what the states are doing as far as signature requirements, and some of those states will say on there, temporarily will allow you to do this to get it in there for your taxes. So give it the state and ask. I mean, I had this one state that does not even accept electronic signature. They took this man's cell phone picture, jacked up cell phone picture for return, and I made the payment online, and I emailed them to them. They're like, just email it to us. I'm like, you of all the states that never take anything, they took it. So that just tells you that man's like, yeah, that's all I got. It's a cell phone picture. He didn't have a fax machine. Poor man, he had nothing. But they took it and they put it on file. So it's like, just give it your state right now, and they can work with you.
That I think is one of the silver linings to all this COVID stuff that's going on. We're all in the same boat. We're all dealing with the same issues. It's just amazing. I would love to be able to see more things that are, especially those states that are paper intensive, whether it's withdrawals or the certificate of authority or whatever form that you have to submit. It would be, kind of like what Texas did, Mike. I know you guys now have that upload documents. Just to be able to have the ability to submit that online or electronically versus where we would always have to mail it in or send a paper check or something like that. It would be really nice, I know, from our standpoint, if we could move more to an electronic standpoint.
I think because of this situation, I think you're going to start seeing that happen, where either more states start taking e-signature or accepting emails, or especially like for minimum tax and stuff like that, or create an account or something that goes through online. Because however long this lasts, I think this kind of like is just going to make it go electronic.
You're going to share our poll with us?
Well,
I think that leads right into our poll, because I answered that question.
I might as well get you in the poll. Do you think this pandemic will be over soon? 9% of you guys said yeah. 77% said no, and there were 14% not sure. How efficient has your state been during this pandemic? Very efficient with 41%. Somewhat efficient was 59%, and completely inefficient we have 0. So I think everybody's doing something. When the quarantine is over, will you keep taking precautions? 95% of you guys said absolutely yes, and 5% said nope.
I need to know who those 5% are.
On the edge.
Like
Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day. That's where I remember this all kind of started happening, and I promise you, it kind of feels already like it's been going on forever. Like, kind of losing track of time, like this has been going on for a really long time. And when you think about it, it's like mid-March, when they officially started.
Wow, that's interesting.
Well, guys, it's for us, it's 4 o'clock here in Puerto Rico. So we've done our hour. Hopefully, if you want to stay and talk a little bit more, you can. We'll be here, leave it open. But for now, we would like to, as promised, we'd like to.
So I hope you guys have found this to be helpful and a good resource. That's what we're just trying to be, is just, we have a lot of knowledge. We know a lot of people. It's difficult to get to your resources. And we wanted to just open this up to our industry, to our circle of insurance professionals. If you guys have resources that you feel would be helpful to others, make sure that you send them over to us and we'll share them, or just put them on the chat. I hope this has been very, very helpful. If you guys want to hang out, you can set them up as panelists, or Christian can set them up as panelists. Christian is the one up there with the beautiful waterfall.
Wow.
Joanne, thank you. Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
both so much.
Thank y'all so much.
Fantastic information. Really, really good.
Appreciate it. Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day, Mike.
Bye-bye, Mike.
Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.
You too,
Always
Joanne.
great to see you, Joanne.
Bye.
Joanne.